Tiff Needell joins me. Not
Cheers,
Needle, Needell. I got it right, Needell, I got it right. Cheers.
Cheers, very nice.
Now, Tiff, the young Tiff, growing up, and clearly just an avid fanatic about speed, motor racing, cars, engines. Was this, I mean, literally from knee high to a grasshopper?
So my dad actually went to work near Brooklands before the war.
Yep.
And so he was lured into those aero engine monsters going around the Brooklands banking. And sadly, of course, that was closed with the factories, the aircraft factories. So after, when I was born in the 50s, Goodwood opened. He took me down to Goodwood. And I still remember the first time I climbed up the big earth bank and peered over the top and saw these loud, noisy, smelly, colourful machines being wrestled through the corners. You know, all I wanted to be was a racing driver.
Because Goodwood still does this stuff every year. The Festival of Speed, huge audiences go.
Because I raced them. I've raced every revival meeting. So for me, it's so nostalgic because I was the genuine sort of kid on the terrace that actually became the star on the pitch, you know, because it's very rare.
Who were the great heroes as a kid growing up?
Well, certainly was Jim Clark. Jim Clark was my utter idol, you know. And but you know, living on the wrong side of the rail. I was born in Weybridge, Surrey, but people always think, oh, silver spoon, Daddy paid for it. But my dad was useless. He was a naval architect, designed boats, and he moved into Weybridge, Surrey in about 1948 and rented a flat. Didn't want one of these mortgage things to tie him down. Yep. He was renting the same flat for 20 years. So we lived in, you know, sort of Monty Python's things, you know. We had no telly, no car, certain periods, no fridge, no... It's amazing how growing up in the 50s, how different it is, like a Monty Python sketch.
How much the world has changed.
How much the world has changed. And my three young sons keep my feet on the ground, you know, mustn't go, you know, can't look back too often. But anyway, so, you know, I went off to...
So how do you go from being a young fan, how do you... I mean... You know, I read a story that the first car that you raced, you actually won in the competition.
Yeah. This is well, I went down to the racing drivers' school at Brands, all my savings, when I was 17, borrowed Mum's Morris 1000 and went down. I did the racing school then, got a feel for it. But I had no chance of buying a car, you know. I thought if I spent all my money doing it, I'd meet a millionaire, or preferably a millionairess in Weybridge that'd sponsor me or something. But so I won this car in this magazine competition. So I won a Formula 4 racing car in the Autosport magazine with a computer trailer. So now I was I was a civil engineer trainee and did a university course. So for 5 years, I was a civil engineer by day, mechanic in my little lock-up garage by night. And every weekend, I was the van driver, the mechanic and the racing driver. And in those days, you could do it. That's what was so beautiful about before science made cars so much more complicated to run.
So many different layers, of course, of motor racing. So many different categories. And you kind of... well, in car terms, went through every single one of those gears through time.
Because I came up through the Formula 4, I got voted the most promising young British driver, I bubbled to the top of the national rankings, and then got a professional drive with the Formula 3 team, and then a Formula 1 scholarship sponsored by Durex, obviously. It was very important, it's a true story. And then I finally got that call to be on the Grand Prix grids, only briefly, sadly, but I got the Grand Prix drive that I dreamed of, and it meant so much to me.
And that must have been pretty incredible.
Well, it was, because, you know, I didn't think I was going to get it. I was only substituting for an injured driver, so it was only a short-term deal. But in those days, 30 cars used to turn up, and only the fastest 24 got the grid. So first you had to qualify. Yeah. And it wasn't the quickest car, the Ensign, that was in. So I was so chuffed, because I ended up on the back row of the grid for the 1980 Belgian Grand Prix.
But you were there.
And alongside me was one of my schoolboy heroes, Emerson Fittipaldi, the world champion. So me, Emerson Fittipaldi. It was a magic moment, but I didn't get stuck into Formula 1, but then I luckily moved out and, you know, I did 14 Le Mans.
Not until you had a bit of an incident with Nigel Mansell.
Well, that was later. That was later when we did touring cars together.
But
oh, no.
You reached the top. As you say, you may not have stayed there very long, but you reached the very top. But then you seem to get, Tiff, this extraordinary break, and you start to move into broadcasting.
I know.
And you're teamed up with this extraordinary fellow, Murray Walker. Yeah. And I think of... And I'm a sports nut. Yeah. You know, I love all sports. I can't help it. I always have, I always will. And we all have favourite commentators on the football, the cricket, whatever. Yeah. But somehow, even into his 80s... And of course, he'd been an army officer on D-Day. He was much older than people realised he was. But somehow, Murray Walker's enthusiasm, commentating on any form of race. Yep. You're a very lucky young man to be teamed up.
One of the nicest men I've ever met in the world. And the funny thing, my life was just all by accidents. You know, I won that car, was luck. And I was just still trying to be right. All I wanted to be was a racing driver. And I got called into the commentary box. They didn't really have many expert analysts in those days, so I was one of the first expert analysts. So they sat me next to Murray Walker, Murray, you know. So I did the little, did the commentating and talked about the incidents and stuff, you know. But the fact that I did that for the BBC was what then led to my voice being known to get the Top Gear gig, which came by accident as well.
Yeah, and you go on to Top Gear. You're pre-Clarkson. You're pre-Clarkson. But, Clarkson joins... And Quentin Wilson, of course.
Quentin Wilson.
Joins, and you're there.
It took off.
As this thing and it's the beginning, isn't it, of Top Gear becoming this extraordinary global brand. What is it about that programme that made it
I don't know. It was just, I only got the gig because Chris Goffey broke an ankle, and so I did a one-off. So I thought, it looks a bit boring, this turning a steering wheel. So if I give it a bit of a kick... So I made the car slide a lot, and the producers were so amazed that I could do this and talk at the same time that I came back more and more. And so Jeremy came in and brought this amazing humour to his presentations. And you say Quentin came along and talk a lot of bollocks about second-hand cars. But it just gelled, and I think, me driving cars sideways and Jeremy's humour and Quentin's amazing history and classic cars and stuff. And of course, we've got Vicky Butler-Henderson in, and other characters came in. And the mid-90s, it was just huge. But
and Clarkson, what was he like to work with?
Well, wonderful. I mean, he was a baffling idiot, like he still is, but, he's a wonderful...
Are you still friends with him?
Yeah, I still see him. I'm a football fan. I'm a Southampton football, but he's Chelsea, so I saw him for a beer last weekend, and Southampton beat Chelsea.
I know, I saw that. Chelsea having a very tough time.
But Jeremy gets himself into trouble, and he is an idiot, but he's made some wonderful television, with Cars and Top Gear, and his military documentaries he made.
Well, do you know what? I have to say, the thing he did on Arnhem about his... first father-in-law and the Victoria Crossing one was one of the most astonishing programmes I've seen. I mean, he clearly is a very brilliant journalist. He's had to apologise a bit recently, but,
like some people go a bit too far sometimes.
It may have happened occasionally.
Loud characters go too far. It may be
possible. You do all of that, but then you finish up with your own Fifth Gear gig at Channel 5, which you did for year after year after year. I mean, you've had a very... long career.
Still going. I'm on Love Cars now. We've got a new TV series doing Love Cars on the road. And
what is it, Tiff, that makes you work on telly?
I'm just still a kid with cars, and I think that's what comes through. I think the whole thing when I ever test a car, people will never drive a Ferrari or Lamborghini or a Pagani Zonda. I always feel like I'm bringing people on board.
So is it a schoolboy enthusiasm?
Yes, and I want other people to understand that. People that won't ever get the chance to drive those cars. So I've always feel like I'm bringing you with me into the telly, and and it's enjoyable. I don't have to act enjoyable,
I can tell.
It just
no, I love it. And Formula One this season, where are we? What do you think?
Yeah, this weekend it's the Max versus Lewis show again. It's a bit showbiz now. The cars are very high-tech room with too many aerodynamicists getting in charge of these cars. They can't follow. We have to have these stupid wings that open at the back to overtake, which people like me don't really like. We want the cars... Yeah. But it's Drive and Survive. It's become this sort of pantomime show that's on telly.
And it's a global brand.
Yeah, it's massive, and it's more. But nowadays, I think a lot of motorsport events and other events, you go to the event rather than to watch the race. There's an after show.
It's a day out.
It's a day out. You go to Monaco.
Yeah.
Monaco's an awful place for Grand Prix cars.
You can't see anything.
No. But they come home
socially,
a great weekend in Monaco with a Grand Prix. Yeah.
Well, Tiff, I have to say, I've not had anybody on Talking Pints who clearly loves his job more than you do.